The planet was nothing but dust and bones. It had once been a place of beauty, a thriving world full of life and color. But now, it was a forgotten wasteland. The Violari people, known for their peaceful ways and their deep connection to nature, had been driven to near extinction. Only a few survived, hiding in caves, abandoned buildings, and forgotten corners of the planet. Ilara was one of them. Ilara had been the heart of her people, a mother, a protector, and a leader. But that was before everything changed, before the war, before the Empire came with their weapons and their desire to control everything they touched. The Velari had fought back, their peaceful nature not enough to stop the storm of destruction that tore through their planet. Ilara's family had been among the first to fall. Her husband, a strong and wise warrior, had died in battle. Her children, who had once filled her heart with joy, were taken from her. She had heard their cries echoing in her mind as she hid in the shadows, waiting for the death that she knew would come. But she refused to give in. She couldn't let the last piece of her people's legacy vanish without a fight. Ilara had always been strong, and despite the pain and the loss, she had fought to survive. But now she was alone, and her body had begun to betray her. The food was gone. The water was barely enough to keep her alive. The air was thick with dust, and the sun, once bright and warm, now hung low in the sky, casting an orange glow over the barren land. It was a place of death, and yet somehow she remained. Her will to live, to see something of her peoples. Memory survive had kept her going. Ilara lay against the crumbled ruins of a once grand city, her breath shallow, her body weak. Her skin, once a soft shade of green, now looked ashen, dry from the harsh winds that had torn through the planet. She had no strength left to walk, no strength left to even cry. All she could do was wait for the end that was sure to come. In the distance, the sound of a ship's engines hummed in the air, faint at first, but growing louder as it neared. Ilara's tired eyes opened. She squinted against the sun, trying to focus. At first, she thought it was just a trick of her fading mind. The silence of the planet played tricks on her senses. But then the shape became clearer. A ship. A human ship. It was small, sleek, and unfamiliar. Ilara had never seen a human ship before, but she had heard stories. Humans were known for their curiosity, for their desire to explore the stars. Perhaps this was the end, after all. Perhaps the humans were here to finish what the Empire had started. Her heart beat faster, but it wasn't from fear. It was from a flicker of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. Maybe, for the first time in a long while, she could find a reason to live again. The ship landed in a cloud of dust not far from where Ilara lay. She could see figures moving inside, their silhouettes framed by the light. As they approached, Ilara tried to rise, but her body refused to cooperate. She collapsed back onto the ground, her vision blurring. She was too weak, too tired to move. The voices grew closer, and Ilara closed her eyes, ready to surrender to the darkness. But then something strange happened. A figure crouched beside her. A human. A man. His voice was gentle, almost soothing, as he spoke to her in a language she didn't understand. His hands, warm and steady, touched her forehead, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Ilara didn't feel alone. The pain in her body eased, just for a moment, and she felt something she hadn't felt in so long. Comfort. The man's hands were gentle, his touch unlike anything she had ever known. His eyes, kind and full of concern, met hers. There was no fear in his gaze, only a quiet understanding. Ilara tried to speak, but her voice was barely a whisper. "Who are you?" she managed to ask, though the words felt foreign on her tongue. "I'm Captain Jacob Hart," the man replied, his voice calm but firm. "I'm here to help you." Ilara's heart skipped a beat. Help. She hadn't heard that word in so long. She had forgotten what it felt like to have someone offer her kindness without asking for something in return. She tried to sit up, but her body refused to obey. Jacob gently lifted her into his arms, cradling her like a fragile thing. "We've got you," he said softly, his words like a promise. For the first time since the fall of her people, Ilara allowed herself to relax. She didn't know who this human was or why he had come to this forsaken place. But in that moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. Maybe her story wasn't over yet. As Jacob carried her towards the ship, Ilara looked up at the sky, feeling a tear slip from her eye. It wasn't a tear of sadness or pain. It was a tear of relief. Relief that she had been found, that she had been given a chance to live. And in that moment, Ilara knew that her life wasn't finished. It was just beginning. Jacob Hart's hands were steady as he carried Ilara into the ship. Her body was fragile, and she seemed like she could break with just a touch. Her skin, once vibrant and alive, now looked pale and lifeless, her greenish hue fading in the dim light of the ship. She didn't speak, but Jacob could feel the weight of her past in the way she held herself, in the way her eyes stayed closed, as if she were afraid to wake up to a world that had already forgotten her. The ship's interior was cool, filled with strange, unfamiliar sounds. Jacob laid Ilara gently on a bed that had been prepared for emergencies. His crew moved quickly, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. They had heard of the Vailari, the peaceful alien race whose planet had been destroyed by the Empire. But no one had expected to find one alive, let alone in this state. "Captain, we need to get her stabilized," Dr. Olivia Grant said, her voice sharp as she assessed Ilara's condition. Olivia was the ship's doctor, and her hands moved quickly as she checked Ilara's pulse and temperature. Jacob nodded, stepping back as the doctor took over. The ship was equipped with advanced medical technology, and Olivia wasted no time in hooking Ilara up to an IV drip and monitoring her vitals. Jacob watched silently, feeling a strange tug in his chest. There was something about Ilara that pulled at him, something deep and raw. He couldn't explain it, but he couldn't walk away either. He moved to a nearby console and sent a message to the rest of the crew. "Prepare the quarantine area. We don't know what we're dealing with yet. Stay alert." The crew nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They had picked up distress signals from this planet, but finding an actual survivor, especially a Vailari, was unexpected. The Vailari were said to be extinct, their civilization crushed under the Empire's boot. Jacob had never imagined he would meet one, let alone offer help. As the hours passed, Jacob sat beside Ilara, watching over her. The gentle hum of the ship filled the air, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of peace, something he hadn't felt in a long time. It had been years since he had been on a mission like this, one that wasn't about fighting or running from danger. For the first time in a while, he felt like he was truly helping someone, and it felt good. Ilara's breathing was shallow, her body weak. Jacob knew she had a long way to go before she would be fully stable, but he also knew that she was a fighter. He had seen it in the way she had held on to life, even in the face of unimaginable loss. Suddenly, Ilara's eyes fluttered open. Jacob was startled, leaning forward as she slowly blinked, her green eyes looking at him with confusion and fear. She had been unconscious for hours, and seeing her awake brought a strange sense of relief. What happened?" Her voice was weak, but it was enough for Jacob to hear the fear in her tone. She looked around, disoriented, her gaze settling on him. "Where am I?" "You're safe." Jacob said gently, trying to calm her. You're on my ship. We found you on the planet. You've been through a lot, but you're going to be all right. Ilara's eyes widened as she processed his words. She tried to sit up, but her body trembled with weakness, and she fell back against the bed. Jacob immediately stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder to steady her. Don't try to move too much. You need to rest, Jacob said, his voice soft but firm. You're safe here. We're not going to hurt you. Ilara stared at him, her expression still filled with disbelief. She looked around at the sterile walls of the ship, the strange technology, the humans in the room, and the strange equipment connected to her body. For a moment, she felt like she was trapped in a dream, a nightmare even, unsure whether this was real or just a hallucination brought on by her exhaustion. Humans, why are you helping me? Her voice trembled, and her eyes filled with a sadness that Jacob could feel deep in his chest. My people are gone. My family is gone. What reason do you have to help me? Jacob sighed, his eyes softening. He sat, down on the edge of her bed, keeping his distance but still close enough to offer her comfort. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. I didn't know who you were when we found you, but I couldn't just leave you there alone on that planet. No one should have to die like that. Ilara's lips trembled as she fought back tears. She hadn't cried in so long, not since the fall of her people. She had convinced herself that her tears were useless, that they wouldn't bring back her lost loved ones or change anything. But now, with this human's kindness, something inside her cracked open. She felt the sting of grief, the weight of loss that had been buried deep inside her. I'm sorry, Ilara whispered, the words almost too painful to say. I'm not worthy of your kindness. My people are gone. I'm nothing. Jacob shook his head. That's not true. You are not nothing. You're a survivor, and you deserve a chance to live. Ilara looked at him, her heart heavy with the truth of his words. She had been abandoned, left to die on a planet that had once been her home. She had seen her people fall, one by one, until she was the last. She had fought to survive, to live, for her children, but now she didn't know what to do. She had nothing left. But this human, this stranger, was offering her something she had never imagined possible. A second chance. A chance to live. A chance to find purpose again. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Thank you for saving me. Jacob smiled softly, his eyes filled with empathy. You don't have to thank me. We're going to help you. Together. As Ilara lay back down, exhausted but comforted, she closed her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to dream. Dreams of a future where she could rebuild, where she could find peace, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to revive her people. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in forever, Ilara felt like she had a chance, and that was more than she had ever dared to hope for. The days passed in a blur of recovery and adaptation. Ilara's body slowly began to regain strength, her wounds healing with the help of the advanced human technology. Jacob spent most of his time by her side, making sure she was comfortable and well cared for. He helped her learn more about the ship, its systems, and the technology that had saved her life. But the greatest gift he offered was his patience. Ilara was used to silence, to solitude, but now she was surrounded by the soft hum of the ship's engines and the constant movement of the crew. It felt strange, almost overwhelming, but it also gave her hope. The humans had not only saved her from death, they had offered her something more, an opportunity to rebuild. She had never expected to feel this way again, never imagined a world where she could start over. One afternoon, as the Ships sailed through the quiet expanse of space. Jacob sat with Ilara in the observation room. The stars outside twinkled brightly against the dark void, a constant reminder of the vast universe they were traveling through. Ilara gazed out at the stars, her heart heavy with the memories of her people. But there was something different. Now, something that gave her a flicker of hope. "You've been quiet lately," Jacob said, his voice soft as he joined her by the window. "What's on your mind?" Ilara turned to him, her eyes thoughtful. "I'm thinking of my people," she said quietly, "of what was lost, what could have been." Jacob nodded, understanding more than she knew. He had seen loss too, though. It was not the same as hers. "I can't imagine what it must be like to lose everything," he said, "but I can promise you one thing. You're not alone anymore. We'll help you find a new purpose." Ilara's eyes filled with emotion. "You speak of helping me," she said softly. "But what of my people? My race? Is there any hope left for them?" Jacob looked at her with compassion. He knew that the Vailari were a race on the brink of extinction. Their civilization had been crushed by the Empire, their cities reduced to rubble. The few survivors, like Ilara, had been left to fend for themselves on a dying planet. The thought of reviving her people seemed impossible, but he didn't want to crush her hopes. "I don't know what the future holds," Jacob admitted, "but I do know this. There is still life in you, Ilara. You are strong, and that strength can carry you forward. If there's any chance for your people, it will come from you. You can be the one to rebuild." Ilara's gaze softened. For the first time in a long time, she began to believe that perhaps there could be a future for her. A future that didn't end with death and loss. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to bring hope to her people, even if they were scattered and broken. Jacob smiled gently. "There's a place, a human colony far from here. It's peaceful, and we've been helping others settle there. It's not perfect, but it's a place where you can find a new start. We can go there, help you get settled, and you can decide what comes next. If you want to, you can even try to find others like you. I know it's not the same, but it's a place to begin again." Ilara looked out at the stars again, her heart racing with the possibilities. A new home, a place where she could heal, rebuild, and maybe find others of her kind. It felt like a dream, too big to grasp, but the idea of it filled her with a sense of purpose. For the first time in years, she felt like she had something to live for. "I don't know if I can ever be the same again," she said softly. "But maybe I can help others, even if it's just one at a time." Jacob placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "One step at a time," he said. "That's all any of us can do. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just take it one step at a time." For the first time in a long time, Ilara smiled. It was small, but it was there. A sign that she was beginning to heal, that she was starting to believe in the possibility of something better. As the days passed, Ilara grew more comfortable with the idea of a new life. She began to ask questions about the colony, about what kind of world it was and how the humans lived. She learned that the colony was made up of people from different planets, from different species, all coming together to create a new home. It wasn't perfect, but it was a place where people helped each other, a place where she could start over. Jacob continued to teach her about human customs and technology, and in turn, Ilara shared stories of her people. She spoke of the Velaris, love for nature, their deep spiritual connection to their world, and their peaceful ways. Jacob listened, fascinated by the culture she described, and he promised to help her find a way to preserve her people's legacy, even if it was just in memory. It wasn't long before they reached the colony, a thriving settlement on a distant planet far from the reach of the Empire. As they landed, Ilara looked out at the lush landscapes, the wide-open spaces, and the people who welcomed them with open arms. It wasn't the world she had lost, but it was a new beginning. Jacob stood beside her, his hand on her back. "Welcome to your new home," he said softly. Ilara turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. You gave me a chance when I had none." Jacob smiled. "We all deserve a chance, Ilara. You'll find yours here." As they walked into the colony, Ilara's heart swelled with a mix of fear and hope. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was standing at the beginning of something new. A new life, a new purpose, and maybe, just maybe, a new chance to rebuild the Vailari people. The colony was a peaceful place, nestled on a lush green world where the air was fresh and the skies were always clear. It was a place where people from many different worlds had come to start over, to escape the chaos and destruction that had torn apart their lives. But for Ilara, it felt like stepping into an entirely new reality. The human colony was much larger than she had imagined. There were homes built from materials she had never seen before, large gardens where humans grew food, and open spaces where children played. It was a far cry from the destroyed cities of her home planet, where ruins and dust were all that remained. Ilara felt like an outsider, unsure of where she belonged in this new world. Jacob stood by her side, offering her quiet support as she took in the sights around her. "You're not alone here," he said softly. "There are people from all kinds of places. They've all come to find a new life, just like you." Ilara nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of the memories she carried. She had lost so much, her family, her home, her people. But as she watched the colony's people work together, living side by side in harmony, something inside her began to shift. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a new place for herself here. The first few days were a blur of introductions and adjustments. The humans treated her with kindness, but there was an underlying tension, a sense of wariness that she couldn't ignore. She had been an enemy to some of them, or at least to the empire that had wiped out her people. Some of the humans looked at her with suspicion, unsure of whether they could trust an alien, no matter how much she seemed to want peace. Ilara spent most of her time with Jacob, who showed her around the colony and helped her settle into a small home that had been prepared for her. The home was modest but comfortable, with simple furniture and a small garden outside where she could plant the seeds from her old world. It was a place where she could begin again, where she could find some semblance of peace. But even as she tried to adapt, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. The colony was filled with people who had their own stories, their own struggles, and she felt like an outsider in a place that wasn't quite home. One evening, as the sun began to set, Jacob found her sitting outside in the garden, staring out at the horizon. Her eyes were distant, lost in thought, and for a moment, he simply watched her, unsure of what to say. He knew the road to healing wasn't easy, but he had hoped that bringing her here would offer her a chance to rebuild. "Ilara?" Jacob's voice was soft as he approached her. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at him with a sadness in her eyes that he couldn't quite understand. "I don't know where I belong anymore," she said quietly. "I've been through so much, and now I'm here, surrounded by people who don't know what it's like to lose everything. I feel so alone." Jacob sat down beside her, his gaze gentle. "I know it's hard," he said. "You've lost more than anyone should ever have to. But you're not alone here. Not anymore." Ilara glanced at him, her heart aching with a mix of gratitude and confusion. "But I don't know how to move forward. My people are gone. I don't even know if I can carry on their legacy. I don't know how to make a life here." "You don't have to have all the answers right now," Jacob replied. One step at a time. You've already started by being here, and that's more than most people ever get. The people here, they've built something. You can help if you want to. You don't have to do it alone. His words touched something deep inside her, a small spark of hope that had been buried for so long. Ilara turned to him, her voice trembling slightly. But what if I fail? What if I can't find a way to rebuild what was lost? Jacob smiled, gently. You won't fail, Ilara. Not if you keep trying. And if you need help, you've got a whole community here to support you. You're part of something bigger now. Ilara felt a strange sense of comfort in his words. Jacob wasn't asking her to be perfect or to have all the answers. He was offering her something simpler, a chance. A chance to try, to heal, and to build a new future. As the days turned into weeks, Ilara began to slowly open up to the people around her. She helped with the community's gardens, using the skills she had learned from her people to grow crops that could help feed everyone. She shared stories of the Velari, their history, and their way of life, teaching the humans about her people's love for nature and the spiritual connection they had with their world. In return, the humans shared their knowledge of technology and human culture, teaching her about their advances and ways of life. Though there were still moments of doubt, Ilara began to find a sense of belonging. She didn't feel like an outsider anymore. She was part of something, a community of people who were all trying to rebuild and create something better. It wasn't perfect, and it would take time, but it was a start. One day, as Ilara walked through the village, she was stopped by a woman named Leah, a fellow survivor from a distant world. Leah had heard about Ilara's story and wanted to talk to her. She was kind, her eyes filled with understanding, and she shared her own story of loss and survival. Leah had lost everything too, her family, her home, but like Ilara, she had found a new place in the colony. They spent hours talking, exchanging stories of pain and hope, and Ilara realized that she was not the only one who had suffered. There were others here who understood, who knew what it was like to lose everything. By the end of their conversation, Ilara felt a warmth in her heart. She wasn't alone. She had found someone who could relate to her, someone who understood her pain. As the days passed, Ilara's bond with the humans of the colony grew stronger. She no longer felt like a stranger. She was part of a community, and in that community, she found the strength to continue moving forward. She began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could rebuild her people's legacy, not by resurrecting them, but by carrying their spirit forward in her own way. And perhaps that was enough. The colony had become more than just a place for Ilara to survive. It had become a home. Each day she felt herself growing stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. She had found a sense of purpose in the small things, tending to the crops, helping with repairs, and sharing her people's wisdom with those around her. It wasn't the life she had once imagined, but it was a good life, one that brought her peace. As time passed, Ilara's bond with Jacob deepened. She saw him not just as the human who had saved her life, but as a friend, someone who understood her pain and was willing to stand by her side, no questions asked. He had given her a chance when all seemed lost, and in return, she was beginning to see a future where she could find a place for herself. But there was still something weighing on her heart. Despite the kindness of the people in the colony, despite the peace she had found here, Ilara couldn't forget what had happened to her people. She couldn't forget the destruction, the loss. Every day, she carried their memory with her, like a shadow that never left her side. One morning, as she worked in the community garden, Jacob came to visit her. His face was serious, and Ilara could tell that something was troubling him. "Ilara," he said softly, "there's something I need to talk to you about." Ilara straightened up, wiping her hands on her clothes. What's wrong? Jacob took a deep breath, his eyes filled with concern. We've received some news. The Empire. They've found us. Yalara's heart sank. The Empire. The very force that had destroyed her world, her people. She had hoped that they would never find this peaceful colony, that it would remain hidden, safe from the destruction that had followed her people for so long. What do you mean? She asked, her voice shaking. How did they find us? They've been tracking ships like ours for a while now, Jacob explained. We've managed to stay off their radar, but they've finally caught up. They're sending a fleet our way. They'll be here within a few days. Yalara felt a cold chill run down her spine. The Empire. The same Empire that had taken everything from her. Her people had tried to fight back, but they had been crushed, and now the Empire was coming. For the only place she had left, I can't let them destroy this place, Yalara whispered, her voice filled with panic. I can't let them do to these people what they did to my world. Jacob nodded, his expression serious. I know, and we're not going to let that happen. We've been preparing for this possibility. The colony has a defense system, but we'll need your help to make sure it's ready. You know more about the Empire's tactics than anyone else here. We can't do this without you. Yalara looked out over the peaceful colony, the homes, the gardens, the people who had welcomed her when she had nowhere else to go. This was the last place she had left, and she couldn't let it fall to the same fate as her home world. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. I'll do whatever it takes, she said, her voice steady, though her heart was heavy. I won't let them take this from us. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Yalara worked closely with Jacob and the rest of the colony's leaders to set up defenses. They fortified the perimeter, built barricades, and set up communication systems. The humans had advanced technology, and Yalara used her knowledge of the Empire's tactics to help them make the most of their resources. She found herself working side by side with people she had once seen as strangers. There was Leah, the woman she had become close to, who had lost everything just like her. There was Marcus, a former soldier who had once fought in the wars against the Empire and now served as the colony's security chief. And there was Anna, a scientist who helped create new weapons to defend the colony. As they worked together, Yalara felt a sense of unity she had never known before. These people, these strangers, were no longer just survivors. They were her family. And she would do everything in her power to protect them. The final day of preparation came quickly. The fleet from the Empire was close now, and there was no turning back. Yalara stood at the front of the colony, looking out at the horizon, where she knew the ships would soon appear. She could feel the fear in the air, but she also felt something else: determination. Jacob came to stand beside her, his face set, in a firm expression. Are you ready? He asked. Yalara nodded, though her heart was pounding in her chest. I have to be. Together they stood at the ready, watching as the first of the Empire's ships appeared on the horizon. The dark silhouettes of the fleet grew larger with each passing minute, a reminder of the past she had been trying to escape. But this time, she wasn't running. This time, she would fight. The defense systems were activated, and the first shots rang out. The humans fought with everything they had, using their advanced weapons to hold the line. Yalara worked with them, coordinating their efforts, using her knowledge of the Empire's strategies to outmaneuver them. It was a battle like no other she had ever fought. A battle for survival, for the future of this new home, for the last hope of her people. The battle raged on for hours, and just when it seemed like the Empire's forces would overwhelm them, something unexpected happened. A signal came through, loud and clear, a voice from a ship on the outskirts of the colony's defenses. This is Captain Elise Turner, the voice said. We've come to help. We've been tracking the Empire's movements. We've got reinforcements. On the way. Yalara's heart skipped a beat. More ships. More people who had come to fight alongside them. With renewed hope, the humans and their allies pushed back. The Empire's fleet began to retreat, unable to stand against the united force that had come together to defend this small colony. When the last of the enemy ships fled, Yalara stood at the front of the colony once more, watching as the sun set on a peaceful world that had almost been lost. The people who had once been strangers were now united, and she was no longer alone. For the first time in a long time, Yalara felt like she had truly found a new beginning. Her people were gone, but she had found a new family, a new purpose, and, together, they had fought for the future. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, Yalara felt ready to face it. The days following the battle were filled with a mixture of relief and celebration. The humans of the colony had managed to hold their ground, and with the arrival of reinforcements, they had driven the Empire's fleet away. It was a victory, but it was also a reminder of how fragile the peace was. Yalara stood in the heart of the colony, watching as the people worked to repair the damage. Homes were rebuilt, the gardens tended to, and the defense systems were updated to ensure they would be ready if the Empire ever returned. Yalara had never imagined a life like this. She had always been a mother, a protector, and a leader for her people. But now, in this strange new world, she was becoming something else. She was becoming a symbol of hope, a symbol of survival. She had once thought she was the last of the Vailari, a people doomed to fade into history. But now, she realized that maybe she could create something new, something that would honor their memory without living in the shadow of their destruction. Jacob had been by her side throughout the battle, always there with a steady hand and a calm word. He had proven to her that not all humans were enemies. Some were like him, brave, kind, and willing to stand up for what was right. She had come to rely on him, not just as a friend, but as someone who had given her the strength to keep moving forward even when it seemed impossible. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills of the colony, Jacob found Yalara sitting on the steps of the main hall. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, and the stars were beginning to appear in the vast expanse above them. The quiet hum of the colony was soothing, but Yalara's mind was still racing with thoughts of the future. "Hey," Jacob said, sitting beside her. "How are you feeling?" Yalara looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. "I'm tired, but it's a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from knowing we've made a difference." Jacob nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "You've made a bigger difference than you realize." Yalara's smile faded slightly as she turned her gaze back to the stars. "I don't know if I can ever be what I once was. My people are gone. I don't know if I can rebuild what was lost." Jacob placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her a quiet reassurance. "You've already started. You've built something here, something real. And no matter what happens, you're not alone. You've got us." Yalara looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had never thought she would find a place like this, a place where she could feel safe and at home again. But Jacob was right. She wasn't alone. The people of the colony had welcomed her with open arms, and together, they had created something that could survive even the worst storms. "I've been thinking," Yalara said after a long pause, "about my people, about what they were, and what they could have become. But I've realized something. They don't have to be gone forever. I may be the last of the Vailari, but I can carry their spirit with me. I can pass on their teachings, their love for nature, their respect for life. I can be a bridge between their past and this future we're building together." Jacob smiled. "That's the spirit, Yalara. The legacy of your people isn't just about what they lost. It's about what you carry with you, what you share with others." Yalara nodded, feeling the weight of her people's memory settle in her heart. It wasn't a burden. It was a gift she could share with the world, a world that was now ready to listen. Over the next few weeks, Ilara began to work with the people of the colony in new ways. She taught them the ways of the Vailari, their methods of farming, their spiritual practices, and their deep respect for the environment. She helped them build more sustainable gardens, where they could grow food that would nourish both the people and the land. She spoke of balance, of living in harmony with nature, and the humans listened, eager to learn from her wisdom. In turn, the humans shared their own knowledge with her. They taught her about the stars, about the technology that powered their ships and homes, and about the advances they had made in medicine and science. Ilara marveled at the things they had achieved, but she also knew that there was wisdom in the old ways, the ways of her people. And so, she worked to combine the two, fusing the Vailari's respect for nature with the humans' technological advances to create something that would help both species thrive. As Ilara's influence grew in the colony, so did her sense of purpose. She had found a new family here, a new home, but she also knew that her work wasn't done. There were still challenges ahead, new threats, new dangers, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She had learned that survival wasn't just about fighting back against the forces that sought to destroy you. It was about building something that could endure, something that could grow and thrive, even in the face of adversity. One day, as she walked through the colony, Ilara was approached by a young girl. The girl looked up at her with wide eyes, her voice filled with awe. "Are you the one who saved us?" she asked. Ilara bent down to the girl's level, smiling softly. "No," she said gently. "I didn't save anyone. We all saved each other." The girl looked at her as if trying to understand before nodding slowly. "You're like a hero." Ilara chuckled quietly, shaking her head. "I'm no hero. I'm just someone who was given a second chance. And now, I'm going to make sure that we all have one." As the years passed, Ilara continued to live among the humans, sharing her knowledge, her culture, and her heart. She became a symbol of strength and resilience, a reminder that no matter how much we lose, there is always hope for a new beginning. The colony flourished, and though the Vailari were gone, their legacy lived on in the world they had helped create. And in the quiet moments, when the stars filled the sky, Ilara would look up and remember the people she had lost. But she no longer mourned their absence. Instead, she honored their memory by living fully in the present, knowing that their spirit would live on in everything she did. She had found a new life, a new purpose, and in doing so, she had created a future that was brighter than she had ever imagined.